Hello, everyone. Some of you may already know me. My name is Solomon Wiltshire. I'm a TA here at LSAT Unplugged. So I'm looking forward to interviewing Elizabeth Madigan, who is also the Associate Director of Admissions at Brooklyn Law. So Elizabeth, you can sort of introduce yourself, let us know how you got involved with Brooklyn Law and became an admission officer.
Sure. Thanks. I'll just echo, thanks everybody for joining. I look forward to the conversation, look forward to hearing your questions. As Solomon said, I'm Liz Madigan, Associate Director of Admissions at Brooklyn Law School. I'm now working on my 5th entering class, and it's actually a really exciting job because every cycle is very, very different, and I'm sure we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that, as we proceed through the interview. But I started my legal career after graduating law school in 2012. I was an assistant district attorney for a few years in Bronx County. After that, I worked at Ernst & Young doing very different work. I was doing international tax controversy work. And then in 2016, I joined the Brooklyn Law School. And so at Brooklyn Law School, I read files on the admissions committee. I work with the scholarship committee. I participate in a lot of different events, both for prospective students as well as admitted students. So lots of different things.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction a little bit. And also just going forward, excuse me for any questions that might be sort of extremely rudimentary in nature. We have a lot of students who just don't know anything about LSAT to folks who know a lot. So excuse those questions.
Those are my favorite types of questions.
Awesome, cool.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely try to prioritize those. So we are an LSAT-centric program. So I should start off with an LSAT question. So the first question I'm going to ask is, how would you say that LSAT impacts your score, your LSAT score impacts your scholarships and type of scholarships you receive? So
great question. And I'm going to say this, and I'm probably still going to say it over and over again, but everything I'm going to say applies only to Brooklyn Law School for the most part. There's that caveat of ask every law school that you're interested in, to prospective students that are listening, what their specific kind of policy or attitude is. You'll find that most schools will tell you kind of similar things, but as a former practicing lawyer, I just want to throw that caveat out there. So at Brooklyn Law School, we look at every component of the application for admission and for scholarship. So yes, LSAT matters. Why? Because there are, studies that show that LSAT performance can predict, bar exam performance. So that's really important to us. Undergraduate GPA really matters as well. Everything else really matters. I know we're going to talk about all of that. So all of this is to say, in a short answer, yes, a great LSAT score can definitely help you get into the law school of your choice. It can definitely help you get a stronger scholarship, at least at Brooklyn Law School, but it's not the end all be all. So if you have a really strong LSAT, but I read your personal statement and I don't think you write well, I will not advocate for your admission, and I will not advocate certainly for you to get a scholarship. So yes, it helps. I always recommend students to put in the extra time. And if you have money for an LSAT prep course in some way, because it can sometimes mean the difference of, between admission versus denial. And it can at some schools and, sometimes at Brooklyn Law School mean the difference between a couple $1,000s per year in scholarship.
Wow, no, thank you for that. One thing as well is staying on sort of the topic of scholarships. I was going to ask, so some schools I know, when you receive a scholarship, you're able to sometimes negotiate that in your second or third year if you place within the top half or top 1/3 of your class. I was curious if that's the same with Brooklyn Law, or if the scholarship offer you receive is the same or constant from your admission letter as well.
Yeah, good question. The policy, frankly, isn't even changed since I've been at Brooklyn Law School, but and I just want to say, you use the word negotiation. You don't negotiate, at least not at Brooklyn Law. After your first year, it's exactly what you said. If you end up in the top 2%, and you had a X scholar, certain scholarship, you might be then upgraded automatically just by kind of the registrar calculating that, yes, you're in the 2%. You don't have to negotiate, don't have to talk to anybody, you automatically get upgraded in that way. So yeah, like I said, the specifics of that, depending on the percentage and the types of scholarship, might change. But yeah, absolutely, there's always an opportunity to, or usually an opportunity to increase your scholarship award.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And you sort of mentioned personal statement. I wanted to ask about that. Obviously, that's, every law school most has a personal statement, but I know with Brooklyn Law, the prompt is sort of open. Could you talk about how that's different from other schools where the prompt may not be as open or more specific?
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
also
like
how
that.
students should approach that as well, obviously.
Yeah, and I thank you for that specific question. I think personally that an open prompt is much harder to answer than a specific, why do you want to go to law school or why do you want to go to this specific law school? An open prompt is basically the way we see it at Brooklyn Law is, you know, tell us about yourself, but you have only 2 pages to do it. So in double space, right? So, or 1.5 maybe. So it's really, really hard. How do you pick really only one facet of yourself? And that's what I recommend. You want to really pick one topic, really, because 2 pages it's really, really short. My answer to this question is going to be longer than 2 pages. So 2 pages really does fly by. So what I recommend is, I recommend a few things. First, don't try to tackle too much. When I say really pick one topic, go for it. Really do one topic. The second thing is, if it's an open prompt, take that seriously. Don't feel the need to tie it into law school. Sometimes I read really great essays and the last that have nothing to do with law school. And the last paragraph, they say, and this is why I want to go to law school and specifically Brooklyn Law School. And it's like 2 sentences. And it just, I find it kind of takes all the wind out of the sails. When the sail was really doing well, that boat was going, on course. Have the confidence to, if you're not talking about why you want to go to law school, which is great, which is fine, stick with that. You can end, your essay not having ever talked about law school, just giving us a glimpse into yourself. And the third piece of advice I would give is really practical. A lot of prospective students ask me specific question like you, Solomon, just asked me. How do I do it? What do I even talk about? What I recommend and what I did when I was going to law school, when I was applying to law school, I wrote out a few different essays actually, because there are, I think, so many different interesting things about myself, different, aspects of myself and my story and my passions that I wanted to share. I couldn't boil them all down into one essay. So I wrote actually 4 different essays about very different things. And I sent them around to people that knew me really well. And I said, which one I actually said, which one do you think is the best? And they all came back with the same essay and they all said, they didn't say like, this is the best written or anything. They said, this one represents you best, which is the question I should have asked. So that's some advice I would give. If you're here, you're really invested in the law school application process, spend the time, write a few different essays, and you might even find that you might be able to use one of those other essays as an, for a question another law school is asking. We actually allow you to submit a few different essays if you'd like. So you'll always use those. And I feel that even if you don't, it will be valuable in that process.
Awesome. Wow, that's really cool. That you it shows that you really took your time when you
Yeah.
were applying in terms of the overall process, 4 different prompts, and then asking students, asking your friends and other folks what the best prompt was. And I like that aspect about looking at what represents you the best. And they also have that perspective as well. And then you're also able to connect that with law school. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
no,
definitely.
but I'm kind of curious. It's just a very, if you can kind of give a short answer on this.
Sure.
I know now the writing sample typically used to be handwritten. Now it's typed, and most of the time, like I say, once again, we're in an LSAT centric course. Most of us only don't even practice the essay part at all. So I'm curious: do schools like yourself, law schools like yourself, look at the writing sample at all, or is that just something like, hey, we know you're brain dead, no need to look at this, or I'm just curious?
We definitely look at it. And now that it's typed, it's amazing. I don't have to pull out my magnifying glass and try to figure out what the curly letters I'm looking at are. Yeah, we definitely look at it. It's not like it won't be dispositive of your application. It won't gain you admission if the rest of your application is not good. But don't give it short shrift. In fact, sometimes, a personal statement obviously is, you can edit it as much as you want. It comes from you. We hope it comes from you. I always, if we go deeper into personal statements, I recommend you have somebody edit it, but I always say don't let them take away your voice. And not edit it, but look over it for edits. But the writing sample, that is just you. So it's our best way to know really, can you write? Can you put together, a coherent argument, with A, B, and C? And definitely don't give it short shrift.
Nice. So sort of shifting into gears about more strictly towards Brooklyn Law, I'm curious for yourself as an admission officer, what would you describe as, I guess, the ideal Brooklyn Law student? So the students thinking of Brooklyn Law, what do you say, okay, hey, this is what a Brooklyn Law student would look like? And I know that has many facets, but I'm just curious for yourself what you kind of idealize or for that to be.
Yeah, I definitely am not going to give you a satisfying answer. And that's one of the things that is a strength. We're so passionate about diversity of so many different types. So, some students, they are just like superstars, in school, for example, and they have, such academic potential in so many ways that they've shown us in their application. Some students apply and, maybe we think they have academic potential that they haven't demonstrated yet, but they have done so much in their community. And we really want that passion on campus. So lots of different things. And, there is definitely no one type. We don't prefer people that have work experience. We don't prefer people that are fresh out of undergrad. We don't prefer people from the Northeast. We don't prefer people with poli sci or government majors. I was a math major. So we really, really look for, I frankly, unique students, because our campus life is really, really important to the academic life, I would say, of our students. A good example of that is, for example, student organizations, pro bono projects. Those actually provide, real life networking and outreach and kind of academic and, specific subject area kind of growth opportunities for our students. So our student life is really, really important, as I said, to kind of the academic growth of our students. And if we don't have any student life, then that all falls by the wayside. So we want people that are really, really active in their community in whatever way that is. And a good way that we see that is through your resume. We don't want students that just go to school and go home. That person I said, even if they have really great scores and a lot of academic potential, I still want to see that, you had a passion and you followed it. Even if that's academic, that's great. Then I want to see a ton of research assistant positions or, published papers, whatever it is. We want to see that you kind of go out there and go for it, because our students are scrappy and they're passionate and they're really, really involved in whatever they're passionate about.
Nice. Okay, so I did get an answer, scrappy and passionate. Got it.
I guess, yeah, I did come around to an answer. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So signing, you mentioned a resume, and I guess working, so tying into that, I was going to ask, I know Brooklyn Law was recently ranked by the National Law Journal among schools which have the highest percentage of first-year graduates being hired by the top 100 law firms. So I was curious for yourself, what do you attribute, and I believe Brooklyn Law actually had made the highest jump on the list, ironically as well. So I was curious for yourself, what do you attribute that jump to, and also being amongst that list in terms of the faculty, the staff, the effort that you all put into making that come across?
So definitely honored and always, nice to be kind of given those amazing accolades. With that said, rankings are kind of a mixed bag. We're so happy to be at the top of obviously some rankings. With that said, they're kind of methodologies and the way they calculate these things are somewhat opaque at times, and who knows what they use for calculation one year versus another. It's frankly not surprising, though, I have to say, with respect to kind of our strength in corporate law. It's definitely one of the things that we're known for. We regularly end up on different lists in terms of our excellence in the corporate law field. What do I attribute that to? A lot of that, frankly, is our reputation and our kind of network. We have alumni at a lot of alumni in top kind of managing positions at a lot of these top law firms. Our students spend externships there during the semesters. Our students do summer internships there, which then get turned into jobs. We have a really robust on-campus interviewing process, which for those of you that don't know, if you're interested in corporate law, specifically working in a big law firm, you want to make sure that the law firm that, the law school that you're going to has what's called OCI, it's on-campus interviewing. And you want to kind of find out what law firms they bring. And basically law firms come to campus and are committed to interviewing this law school's students. So we have every firm that you would want to work at if you're interested in big law, they come onto campus for OCI. And I would also, echo what I said earlier, our student organization, our corporate law student organization is really, really active in bringing back alumni. And, when I say alumni, that's code for connections, it's code for jobs. And as I said, because we're an older and larger law school, our tentacles are kind of in the right places in terms of working in one of those law firms. So yeah, we do really, really well in that field. And I should also, definitely plug our professors. We have some amazing professors that are just on the forefront of, in terms of bankruptcy work, tax work, even social enterprise is a really kind of interesting new field, not new, but field that's really gaining some momentum now, and it's kind of a subset of corporate law. So we have a lot of different offerings within corporate law that I think speak to our strength in that field.
Nice. And thank you for answering that question. I realize it can be such a broad question because then you're saying, oh, I want to give credit to here and here, and it's really everyone, right, that kind of joins to that, so I can understand that. And you sort of mentioned alumni, and I wanted to get into sort of the clinics, because I know that's one of the strengths of Brooklyn Law. In fact, I know, although I know you're not a big fan of rankings, but I believe recently, you all were ranked by Pre-Law Magazine as the number one school in the nation for public defenders and prosecutors.
Yeah.
So I was curious, I guess, what sets Brooklyn Law apart in that area, and how have you all been able to maintain those connections being in New York, the value of being in New York of that? So yeah. I
have to say, I love rankings when they're good for us. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so I'm sorry. So you're talking about clinics. You're talking about basically what the question specifically is. How clinics help students get jobs within New York.
Yeah, and actually, you know what? I should back up actually, because there was. I actually should back because, like I said, I wanted to ask a rudimentary question, which is, could you explain what clinics even are? What are clinics? Some students may not even be familiar with what a clinic is.
Yeah. No, and I think that will help explain the answer to your question. Yeah, thank you. So, clinic, and yes, we are definitely at the forefront of clinical education. We've always been. It's definitely a rising trend. If you're looking at law schools, you're going to hear that. It's a buzzword, and yeah, we have one of the broadest and deepest offerings. So clinics are in-house law firms. You do all the work of being a lawyer. Whatever is required in a given case for that clinic, if you're a student in that clinic, you do it. So you'll be doing things like interviewing a client, filing a motion, arguing that motion before a judge and opposing counsel, negotiating a settlement or a plea agreement with opposing counsel, drafting partnership agreements for a startup, participating in patent defense and litigation. I could go on. So you do all this real work with real clients. It gives you obviously a huge leg up in the employment process, but also it helps connect you with litigants, with employers. So a lot of great ways to basically become part of the legal market and get in touch with that while you're still in law school. Frankly, I've gotten jobs based off the connections I made during a clinic or an externship, and many of my colleagues have as well. So it's something that, frankly, I recommend, you kind of look at in your law school search. And specifically, if there's a specific area of law that you're interested in, make sure the law school you're going to has a clinic in that field and try it. You never know what, practicing patent law is like. It might sound fun or interesting. When you practice it, you might find out you actually don't want to do it. Or you might try something you didn't think you liked and you might fall in love with it. So I highly recommend them. And I guess I just answered the second part of the question, is why are they valuable? Is, obviously it gives you huge kind of amount of experience from which to draw in the employment process. And it also makes you more educated as you go through law school and figuring out what you like and what you don't. So I can't speak highly enough of clinics. I think they're really, really important.
Awesome. Yeah, no, you did answer the second part. I wanted to sort of specify the second part as well, which is the fact that Brooklyn Law obviously is located in New York, right? Brooklyn. And one of the reasons I mentioned that, I was listening to what you said earlier, you talked about how you are sort of an older institution, you have connections with those places as well. So I
Mhm.
was curious as you can speak to, the advantage of being in New York and the connections that you all have to that, and how students should take that into account when they're thinking of the clinics, the alumni network, and in terms of jobs and employment in the future.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. So our school is uniquely positioned, and I mean that literally. We are in kind of the right across the street from New York Supreme Court civil term, criminal term, the bankruptcy court, the U.S. Attorney's office, the DA's office, the Federal Circuit Court for the Eastern District. I think I said bankruptcy court, surrogates court, I mean, you name it. Legal aid, Brooklyn Defenders is not too far. Tons of law firms, obviously. Brooklyn Law School grew up kind of in that as kind of a law school that was going to train lawyers to work in those courthouses across the street. And Brooklyn Law students are externing in those courthouses across the street, with judges and with those different organizations that I mentioned. Makes it really easy for our students to, if you're in a clinic and you need to be in court, you can go across the street, make your court appearance, and come right back to school. So it really, really helps connect you with the legal community, which is literally across the street. So it definitely helps, kind of the literally the physical position that you're in. It makes it just frankly really convenient. And moreover, I would say kind of more generally for being in New York, it really just depends, I think, where you want to end up. New York is one of the biggest legal markets. I think it's a great place to be a lawyer. It's a great place to do criminal law. That's what I did. And you know, any I would say aside from maybe like oil and gas litigation, go to law school in Texas. Um, any kind of legal market, you'll find a lot of really interesting cutting edge work and opportunities here in New York. But ultimately, wherever you want to end up, obviously, is a very personal decision. What I recommend is you want to think about where you want to end up after law school. And it's definitely helpful to go to law school in that place for all the reasons I just mentioned. You're going to make connections, you're going to figure out, how the judges in this county like to whatever have, motions filed and how they like to be addressed. Things like that really help you feel comfortable and feel that, and also obviously give you a leg up in the employment process. So definitely helps to go to school in the place that you aim to end up. For those of you that are thinking, maybe you want to go to school in a different city and then end up somewhere else for whatever reason, it's definitely doable. My only advice would be make sure that the school you're going to has alumni that are in the town that you're going to end up. And we have alumni in all 50 states and countries all over the world. But you want to make sure that your school, has connections in that place you want to end up. Get connected with those alumni right away, your first year. And even if the admissions office will connect you with somebody, they might be able to connect you with somebody before you even make your kind of matriculation decision. Um, Make those connections, keep those connections going. And the second thing I would say is spend at least one summer, doing an internship or job or something like that, or semester if you can, in that city that you're going to end up. Again, it's all about making those connections. So just some words of advice if you are thinking about ending up in a city that's different from where you want to go to law school.
Awesome. And I wanted to invite students, if they have any questions, once again, you can message me directly or put it in the chat and I'll try to forward that. Sort of on that same topic, I know Brooklyn Law has a strong international program as well. One reason being that it's in New York and also the work of the faculty and staff. But kind of shifting gears in a sense, you kind of mentioned something about, understanding which type of law you're going to work in, staying in that area, et cetera, and considering all those things. I was curious for yourself, drawing upon your experience as a lawyer, in particular, how versatile can a law degree be in particular?
Yeah, I think I'm a great example of that. Yeah, thank you for kind of pointing that out. So I started as a prosecutor, and that's what I kind of went to law school for. I wanted to work in criminal law. And after so I took one tax law class in law school and I loved it. I did not expect it. So another piece of unsolicited advice is, try things out. Law schools, you don't really have to take, like, there's usually not many kind of requirements after your 1L year. Try things out. It might be your last time in school. And in my experience, people that are in law school, they like school. So enjoy it to the extent that you can. So as I say, I took one tax law class, and I also mentioned, I was a math major. So I kind of wanted to exercise that analytical side of my brain a little bit. And so I went to work at Ernst& and Young, and the position there that I worked in was not, you didn't need to be a lawyer for it. So I think that's really crucial is, in this conversation is there are a lot of jobs that, you're not going to function as a lawyer. In fact, you actually cannot give legal advice if you work for an accounting firm. It goes against kind of some regulations that were enacted after the Enron scandal. But you do work, you are doing a lot of work that lawyers do in terms of legal reasoning, and you need to work with legal regulations and work within the law and make legal arguments and work with the IRS. You just can't technically give legal advice. It's kind of it's kind of murky, but basically having a JD makes you a really strong candidate for that position and for a lot of other positions. And so it definitely helped me get that job. It helped me get the position I got in that job. It helped me get certain opportunities. As I said, I was able to work in the controversy division. So I was working, submitting documents to the IRS right away in my first year, on behalf of clients. And so it was really fun work. Basically, kind of like foreseeing, imminent litigation is what I was doing, which was really fun in the tax world. So, like I said, it was really, really advantageous to have a JD degree, and it definitely kind of made me more in demand for that role. And then I had to say my role currently is also, a position that you don't need a law degree for, but definitely helped me get that job, helps me, I think, speak with prospective law students with obviously more context and knowledge of the subject. And so there are a lot of different positions that you can have as a lawyer that aren't necessarily legal. The other side of that is you can definitely stay working as a lawyer and transition throughout your career. One of my supervisors when I was an intern during law school at the Manhattan DA's office, he had spent his entire career at the Manhattan DA's office. He was like very well respected. He was in the Rackets Bureau doing really interesting work. And he, towards the end of my internship, he told me that he was also leaving and he was going to work to do work for a firm doing family law. And I said, "Oh my gosh, like that is such a change. What experience do you have in family law?" And he said, "Absolutely none." So you can always kind of hop around. A lot of skills are transferable. I see why it's very easy to see why, matrimonial firm would hire him. He spent his whole legal career in court. So that's really, really transferable. If you can litigate, you can litigate anything. If you can, draft or argue a contract, you can do that on any type of contract. So that's one of the fun things about law and law school.
All right, thank you. That was a good answer. And I guess sort of staying on that same topic, I was curious. Many times you hear from a lot of folks that, hey, why are you in a law school? There are already so many lawyers out there, et cetera. So I was curious, and you kind of mentioned the role. And obviously you yourself, you kind of have this very unique perspective because of the fact that you've been a law student, you've been a lawyer, and now you're also working as an admission officer as well. So you kind of had that 360 unique perspective. And so you sort of say at the gateway of people entering into that field. And I wanted to ask for yourself, having that perspective, what would you say the role of law is and why are lawyers needed in the first place?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, that's what motivates me every day. I and this, frankly, our whole office and actually our school this is like our kind of guiding principle is that lawyers are needed now more than ever, for so many things. I mean, we all see that kind of play out on a day-to-day basis, in kind of whether it's civil rights, environmental rights, different kind of issues related to litigation, of all types, of First Amendment issues. I mean, lawyers are the kind of the last kind of safeguard we have, and thank God we have them. And I think there's definitely like always a stereotype of, there's too many lawyers, and do we need more lawyers? And yeah, people need lawyers, but people need good lawyers. We need good lawyers out there. When you are, if most people see lawyers at a time that is the most important time in their life. And so, yeah, we absolutely need good lawyers, whether it's to safeguard your property, your rights, and your rights can mean so many different things, as I kind of just hinted at. So this is something that we're very passionate about. You'll find that at least at Brooklyn Law School, even our students who go on to work in corporate law, they do public interest work when they're at Brooklyn Law School. We're on a lot of those other rankings, being really highly ranked for public interest, as well as corporate law. And it's something that our community is just really passionate about. As I said, even if you have already a big law gig lined up, our students, they do pro bono projects or clinics, or they're involved in student organizations. Our faculty is also really invested in that. So I know that like during the last presidential administration, we had different faculty members. I don't remember exactly what it was called. But every Wednesday they had like a lunch in the student lounge, and to cover a different like constitutional issue that was currently in the news. Just because they wanted to, and the students really wanted to, and it was really well attended. And so our community is really passionate about not just becoming lawyers, but becoming lawyers in society, and how that matters. Even if you're working for, a corporation, or helping a startup, or helping, a refugee, whatever it is, we definitely need more good lawyers to protect people.
And so I wanted to key in on that. The key term, I guess, good lawyers. What would you sort of describe as a good lawyer? And I guess, how does one become a good lawyer? Like, is that a process you start in law school, studying diligently, or is that process start after law school? Like, how is that process? If you were to tell someone, hey, if you want to be a good lawyer, you have to do X, Y, and Z. How would they get to that step of that process?
Yeah, and it's a great question. I can only really kick a stab at it. When I say good lawyer, what I mean is not necessarily, that like you work the hardest or anything, but in my mind, it's somebody that cares in whatever way that is, right? You can be kind of a shark. There's the stereotype of really aggressive lawyers. If you're a shark for the right reason. So in my mind, it's being a good lawyer is a lawyer that is doing the work that he or she does, keeping in mind what role that is in society. If you're helping somebody, who had like a slip and fall, win a couple extra $1,000 judgment, it might not seem that important to me or you, but to that person, it's their life. So I think that being a good lawyer, again, is keeping in mind that the cases that you have, are the most important, usually the most important moment in your clients' lives. When I was at the DA's office, that's something that I always really try to keep in mind. This is not just a case. I may have over 100 cases, but this is a victim and this is a defendant. And so I think it's a good lawyer is one that treats every case with that respect, and not just as, another case. Good lawyers can be all types of different people. They could practice different types of law. They can have different approaches, different attitudes. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
Nice. No, awesome. No, thank you for that. I think it's really important to differentiate that it's not just about, I guess, the hardcore skills, because if you graduate from law school, we assume everyone has that, right?
Yeah.
And what you're saying is what separates a good lawyer from those folks are people who have the moral character, as well as also, obviously you never want to get too personal with anything, but having the ability to see things from their side, right? Like, this is their life at work as well. And
Yeah,
talking
I realized I completely ignored the part of your question, which was about, is about being diligent in law school. And I think that to me, that shows how much importance, at least I place on that. It was really not much.
no, no, that makes sense. In terms of, like I said, once again, I assume that everyone who graduates from law school at least has at the standard level the ability to
Right.
think so. Yeah, or else you wouldn't graduate, right? And again, then it's also
Right.
more.
Exactly.
Talking about good lawyers and someone who I envisage being a good lawyer in the future. One of the students asked in the chat, what is the LSAT? What is the last LSAT flex score Brooklyn Law will take for the fall 2021? And they're asking,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, yeah, it's good. And they're asking, is there a specific deadline to apply? And the reason why they ask is because they see on the website it's on a rolling basis. So they're curious about that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. You would definitely know this more than me. What is the last kind of date they've announced for this year? Is it June or July?
I believe well the LSAT Flex is still going to be going on throughout, but I think June is the last date for it to just be 3 sections, whereas after that in August and on it's going to be 4 sections and on in particular.
Is it still set to be remote?
Yeah, it's still set from what I understand as of now, it's still set to be remote. Yes.
Okay, so in terms of, yeah, so we do have rolling admissions, which means basically we accept applications until the class is full or until classes begin in August. So I can't really give you an answer as to that, but I will say that this year we're seeing huge jumps in application volume, and that's true of law schools across the country. Um, our class might be full, frankly, earlier than it usually is. Usually it doesn't fill up until really I would say like summer. But this year we might frankly be full by maybe late spring. But with that said, I can't really make any guarantees. The best thing I would say is if you're waiting until like June or July to take the LSAT for this year, it might be too late. So yeah.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. And then sort of switching gears, talking about LSAT and also, I know Brooklyn Law also has, and they said thank you that you covered their question. So, yeah, and I know Brooklyn Law, and I know once again you're not a big fan of rankings, but Brooklyn Law is ranked amongst the top 16 law schools in terms of
Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
Nice, right? Yeah, so in terms of part-time programs, Brooklyn Law is ranked amongst the top 16, which is very important for students who maybe your parents have a family, or
Yeah.
just in general may want to work during law school because maybe they just maybe not be able to afford it through the general standpoint. So I was curious from that standpoint. I know that Brooklyn Law in particular, I was looking on the website, if you can clarify this, people who are part-time students, they started in the summer, but 1L students can also have the option to start it in the summer. Could you clarify that?
Yeah. So it's kind of a new program that we're having is this summer start. Um, with respect to the summer start, and I can talk more about the four-year program in general, but for the summer start, the way it works for four-year students is everybody has to take the same classes in their first year. But four-year students, which is it's what we call our part-time students, because they take fewer classes a semester, there are some classes that you have to take. There's one class, frankly, that you have to take in the summer. Criminal law is only offered in the evenings in the summer. So you must take it the summer after your first full year, or we allow you the opportunity to take it the summer before you start. And we've actually always offered that. And this year, for the first time, we're allowing three-year students to also take one class, for regular full-time students to take one class the summer before they start as well. You absolutely, for either option, whether you're a three-year or four-year student, you absolutely do not have to do it. It's a nice way, I think, to kind of get your feet wet, by taking one class, if your schedule allows it. And I know a lot of students, they always ask me, or prospective students, they're so excited to start. What can they do this summer, before they start? And I always say, do nothing, or read a book, see your family, because you won't be able to do that once you start law school. But if you ignore my advice, you can actually start law school a little bit early. So it's a nice opportunity, but it's absolutely not required.
Nice. No, thank you for that. And just to clarify, so it's not mandatory for whether you're regular 3L or incoming 1L or part-time, and you only take one class during the summer. It's not like a full work.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I guess on that same question, you kind of touched upon it, but I guess I was going to ask, what would you say the advantages or disadvantages are of taking class during the summer?
Yeah, advantage, like I said, you definitely get your feet wet. I think it's help. Law school is such a unique animal. It's very different, even from undergrad, and in terms of the style and in terms of, you only have one exam at the end. And so you have to kind of adjust to that mindset, I think. And so having one class, I think, is really helpful to kind of get used to that in a less pressured environment. The other pro I would say is you get to know your classmates a little bit sooner, which is just really exciting and helps provide support. I think it's really important to have that. For us at Brooklyn Law, we're not, our students are take their studies seriously, but they're not cutthroat. It's not like those horror stories you might hear or read about. So it helps kind of give you a jump start on finding your, family that you'll have for the next 2 years. um Disadvantages, I would say, is just that you don't have that. If you were going to have free time, which our part-time students usually don't, they're usually working. But if you're a full-time student, or if you were able to take time off before you start law school, you don't have that. So you're in law school for a longer amount of time total, which is just something that some people are fine with. Like I said, I always recommend students take that time to really decompress, and don't I don't think it's necessary to do any kind of prep courses or anything before you start law school. Before you start law school, I don't think you need to learn contracts before you go to school and learn contracts, but it makes some students more comfortable. It's just a matter of if you want to enjoy your free time, or if you want to enjoy studying. Some people enjoy studying, so go
Mm,
for it.
nice. No, thank you for that. And I guess on that same topic, I'm curious, what do you attribute the strength of your part-time programs to? Why have you all been able to be so successful in that area or field?
Yeah, and I also just want to say, for anybody that's interested in the part-time program, I am the main designated admissions counselor for that program. So you'll be working with me, and I love working with four-year students. I never want to give up that role. In the whole time I've been at Brooklyn Law, I hold on to it. Four-year students are amazing. You guys, to any prospective four-year students, as Solomon said, you have jobs, you have families, usually, and you're in law school, which is to me a full-time job. So it's really, really remarkable. And I find that uh, when I was in college, I went to school that had a really strong athletics program, and what I found was that the athletes, they have like practice sometimes twice a day, and somehow they still did just as well, if not better, than the non-athletes. Because when you kind of have that constant, that schedule, it doesn't give you a break at all. You kind of rise to the occasion in some cases, right? And they just knocked it out of the park. And my four-year students are like that too. They do so much, and they do it all so well. They never quit, and they can't quit. There's no choice. You don't really have time to breathe, I find, in law school, to be honest with you. And so they really rise to the occasion. A lot of them already have amazing careers, and they just want that legal degree, or they're taking huge risks and are kind of trying to transition to a brand new career, sometimes at a later stage in their life, which, as I said, takes so much courage. So I think that they bring so much experience, and a lot of other great qualities to our campus. That's one thing I just have to say about our four-year students. Another reason why I think that the program is so strong personally is that the four-year students, the program is really flexible. So they can take a class after your first year, they can take a class during the daytime. And similarly, obviously if their schedule allows it, three-year students or full-time students, they can take classes in the evening because we're a larger school. A lot of professors, they'll teach in the evening. So if you want to take a certain class, you can take it during the day, you can take it in the evening. There's a lot of offerings. Some students, for example, full-time students, they would like to take a class in the evening because they want that professor, or works better with their schedule, whatever it is. And so there's a lot of kind of intermingling between the classes. Four-year students are not kind of only taking classes with four-year students. It inures to everyone's benefit. As I said, the four-year students bring a lot to our campus that I think is really, really valuable. And the three-year students, I think, help bring what the four-year students might sometimes be lacking, which is that connection to campus. Hearing about other opportunities, hearing about what student organization is doing. And so it helps kind of connect them to our community. And there are no separate kind of professors for four-year students. There are no separate classes for four-year students. Brooklyn Law is Brooklyn Law for all of our students, and I think that's one of the reasons why the program is so successful.
Well, nice, and I can tell you're really passionate about it. I'm glad I was able to speak to someone who was actually who's at the forefront of that. That's
Yeah.
I mean, I guess sort of on that same topic, I guess similar in a way. For students maybe who've been out of school for possibly 4 or 5 years plus, sort of to the area of letters of recommendation, how should they approach that? I believe Brooklyn Law it's between 2 and 4 letters that you all ask for. I'm curious how should students maybe who've been out of school for some time approach the academic letter versus the work letter, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, it is. We require two, but we do accept up to four. And basically, if you're, what I always say is, if you're in undergrad, some people are applying when they're seniors in undergrad, or if you're like a year out of undergrad, we really want to see academic letters of recommendation. If you are 2 or more years removed from undergrad, we don't necessarily expect that you've kept in touch with your professors. And I don't necessarily think that it's the best representation of who you are anymore, especially if you're, as you said, 4 or 5 years out of undergrad. You likely have a career now, and or you've been doing different things. College is 4 years. So if you're 4 years out of college, it's a whole nother life, a whole nother experience that you've had. So first, don't feel pressure to submit an academic letter of recommendation. And if you're a few years out of undergrad, we don't expect to see that. Now, if you do submit an academic letter of recommendation, that's great. Sometimes I see people that are 6 or 7 years out and the professor still remembers them. And that's amazing. That's really exciting. But if you don't have that, we don't hold it against you. We'll definitely look at your transcripts and look at your grades. And, we still want to see some indications of your potential for success in the classroom. But as I said, we won't hold it against you. We are great with seeing, letters from supervisors or employers, whatever it is that you do with your time. As I said, we want to get a sense of who you are. We want letters of recommendation that can speak to, your academic potential or your kind of work ethic or your qualities as a person. To the extent that a letter of recommendation can speak to more than one of those, the better. But yeah, don't feel like you're not giving us enough, and don't feel the need, I would say, to submit a letter of recommendation from a professor who you don't think can remember anything. It's not helpful. We see right through it. Sometimes it's clear that a professor is just reading off of, oh, this person received an A- in my course, and then they talk about like their own course for the next paragraph, and they don't really know you. And we don't really hold it against you, but it's not helpful. So you don't have to feel the need to do that.
Awesome. And I was going to talk about addendums and grades because you kind of mentioned that. But before I jump into that, I just wanted to clarify. I think you said it. I just want to make sure I'm clear. So for students who've been out of school for 4 or 5 years plus, they don't necessarily need to submit any academic letters of recommendation. It doesn't put them at a disadvantage. You're more so looking at their work history from their employers, and those are the letters you would prioritize from there. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome, nice. So sort of jumping into addendums and grades, as you mentioned in particular, how should students sort of approach that area or topic in particular?
So an addendum for grades specifically?
And I'm sorry, let me back up in terms of rudimentary questions once again. What is an addendum, first of all, some students
Yeah. Sure.
And then my follow-up question to that was, yeah, addendums for grades, character and fitness, et cetera. What are addendums used for?
Sure. Great question. I love how specific it is. Just what is an addendum? Because what I like to think, at least at Brooklyn, we allow you to submit addenda, and we allow you to submit, additional essays. And so they're different. So addenda they should be short, they should be to the point, they should explain whatever it is that you want to explain. That's what an addendum is. Additional essays are essays. So those should be, a good representation of your writing and should be showing us, a side of you that either addresses the prompt or one of our additional prompts that you can answer. So an addendum, as I said, can help to explain something. So what do you want to explain? Well, Solomon kind of already, talked about some possible things. Great. So let's say you started undergrad and you started as a pre-med major, and then after your first or second year, you realized your heart wasn't in it, and then you became a a music major, and you did really well, and your GPA or cumulative GPA, for example, is let's say lower than the GPA that you had with your music courses, but higher than the GPA that you had with your pre-med courses. So your cumulative GPA isn't really representative of your potential for academic success. You would argue that your grades in the music major are more indicative of your potential for academic success. So what I recommend is kind of in that case, for example, submitting an addendum and saying, you started off as this, and then everything I just said, right? It wasn't your passion, so you went to music, and you think that that is a better indicator. Once you found you hit your stride, and that was where you put your eggs in that academic basket, and look at all the A's I got as a music major. The other situation I often see that I definitely want an addendum for is sometimes I see a transcript that has all really good grades, and then there's 1 or 2 semesters that are not great. And if I don't see an addendum, I'm thinking, what happened? I always transcripts really tell a story. We don't just look at GPA. They really tell a story. So I'm thinking, what happened? First, I'll look at the types of classes. If the types of classes are still the same, as the ones you got good grades in, then again, I'm thinking there's more to the story. If the story is if there's a reason, you were struggling with whatever it is, a family issue, a personal issue, whatever it is, we really encourage you to submit an addendum to explain that. An addendum gives us context for any component of your application that you want to explain. And frankly, we welcome them. Don't want to overkill. We don't need an explanation for something that doesn't need an explanation. But if it's something like that, something really important that you want to kind of have us see in a different light, definitely submit an addendum. The other thing that we always see addenda for, and that we require them are if you answer yes to some of the character and fitness questions. Character and fitness is just your opportunity to let us know what you've been basically you could be cited for or disciplined for in school or arrested or any kind of thing that you will eventually need to disclose to the bar that you want to be admitted to in whatever state you want to practice in. You have to put that on your law school application. So the addendum will allow you to explain in more detail what happened, what the incident was, and how it was resolved. And we really encourage you to be super, super honest, because as I said, when you are done with law school and take the bar and apply to the bar to work as a lawyer, it's all going to come out. And the state bar in whatever state you're going to practice in is comparing whatever they find in your background check to what you wrote in your law school application. So be very, very honest. When in doubt, disclose everything. Parking tickets, speeding tickets, no matter how small you think it is, it's just better to disclose.
Awesome. And in terms of addendums, I was curious, what would you say, or you kind of already touched on it, but I was just want to clarify, what would you say a bad addendum is and a good addendum is? And on that same sort of topic with character and fitness, as you mentioned, what are there things you shouldn't disclose, or should you just go for it and just disclose everything? Does it look negative that you even have an addendum? Some students may be curious about like, hey, there's an addendum that might look negative on my application.
Yeah, no, I mean, we view them as helpful, frankly, at Brooklyn Law School, at least. The second to last question you just asked.
No, I know that was a lot. And I guess I was asking what are good and bad examples of an addendum?
So we like to see them. A good addendum is one that, like I said, is short and it doesn't have to be short, but it is to the point. When you said should you disclose everything?
Yes, disclose everything, yes.
Disclose everything. Like, no matter what it is, like, just disclose it. Even if you think that the matter has been, let's say, the judge told you this, arrest, let's say, was sealed and dismissed and expunged, good for you. Just disclose it. You never, as a former prosecutor, something might end up on one background check, but it was only because it was only deleted in one system but not another. You never know. And then it looks like you lied when you're applying to the bar, so just disclose everything. Law school admissions officers have seen it all. We're impressed by very little. So you want to disclose everything. I'll just leave it at that. Okay. So a good addendum is very to the point, and you don't need to think of it as an essay. A bad addendum, let me think. Yeah, you don't need to go on too long. Sometimes we read addenda that are, obviously it's just the flip side of what I said was a good addendum. But if you have, sometimes I read, an explanation of a speeding ticket, and somebody said that, it was like a they made the wrong moral choice and they've learned from their mistakes and they will never speed again. It's just like, it's not a big deal. It's a speeding ticket. I think sometimes people forget that we're humans too. Just own up to whatever it is, explain the circumstances, explain what the disposition was. Sometimes, I'll get an addendum that says that somebody was pulled over for a DUI and they pled guilty. We need to know a lot more than that. What were these specific charges, what did you plead guilty to, and what was the sentence. So be specific, be to the point. You don't need a lot of kind of moral explanation, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I appreciate you clarifying. And I guess I'm going to ask just one more follow-up question on that. So, for example, many of us obviously have gone to universities, and universities are very notorious for parking tickets.
Yeah.
So would one, and this always, once again, this might be a rudimentary question, but I just want to clarify, would one need to disclose, like, hey, I got a parking ticket at a university for X, Y, and Z reason, or curious about that as well?
Yeah, just say it. Just, it's not a big deal. Like, we don't care.
Awesome. All
Not that
right.
we don't care, but we've seen it, and it's not necessarily going to be dispositive of any kind of decision in your application. And what I recommend is you can just say, because nobody necessarily remembers the date or the year, even, I would just say, I received a few parking tickets while I was an undergrad at this school, if you can't remember the specifics.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, we're sort of winding down. We have a few minutes left. I want to just leave you, open back the floor up to you and see if you had any last minute things you wanted to say or topics we didn't touch upon that you wanted to give to students or even prospects, et cetera.
Oh yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for listening. It's actually been a real pleasure talking to you, Solomon.
Thank you.
Um, I would say, let me think. Frankly, it's a very, as I said, kind of competitive cycle this year. So law schools are kind of navigating that in different ways. So you can never have kind of enough information. I know that's what you're all about. That's why you're conducting these interviews and, helping students get to hear from different perspectives. Any law school that you're interested in, you know, reach out to the admissions office, ask to speak with an admissions counselor. I'm going to throw out my email, in a minute. Always happy to have you reach out to me. And the other thing I would say is ask any law school that you're really interested in to speak with a current student, at least one. There's really no better feel for what a school is about than speaking with a current student. I can talk about Brooklyn law until I'm blue in the face, but you want to speak with somebody who's really has that experience. In my opinion, I think that, as I said, the more information, the better. And that's something that you really want to make sure that you make that decision, which is definitely an investment of time and money, with the most information possible. You're here, you're watching this, so you're obviously taking this really seriously. So I would just make sure that, on the back end, after you're applying and take the LSAT and do all of that, when you're making your decision, to do it in a very kind of sober and methodical way, because it's really, really important. It's going to determine your legal network. It's going to determine the opportunities you have during and after law school. It's going to determine the type of environment and community that you're in, which I think are all really important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yes, please do drop your email.
Doing it right now. Yep.
Yeah, so it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to pass it over to Ayaka because I believe we're going to be having our next session in particular. But thank you so much once again. And I hope things go well with you during this COVID time period. So yeah.
You as well, Solomon. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have a nice one.
You too.
Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.